Imagine this. You move into your dream home, a beautiful Victorian house with a sprawling garden. Everything seems perfect. Until the clock strikes midnight. Your loyal dog, your protector, begins to growl. Not at the door, not at a stranger, but at something. Unseen, something lurking in the shadows. What would you do? Would you stay or would you run? Cut to a montage of a dark, empty house, a dog growling, and a shadowy figure appearing briefly in the corner of the screen. This is the true story of the Thompson family, who discovered a chilling secret hidden within their new home. A secret so horrifying, it will leave you questioning what lies beyond the world we see. A story of love, loss, and a little girl who never truly left. Stick with me till the end, because this isn't just a ghost story. It's a journey of redemption, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a family and a spirit trapped in time. And trust me, the ending will leave you speechless. Before we dive into this emotional and terrifying tale, don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoy spine-chilling stories. Subscribe to this channel for more real-life mysteries and horror stories, and ring the bell so you never miss out on the next upload. Now, let's begin. It was a crisp autumn evening when the Thompson family moved into their new home. The house, a quaint Victorian-style building, stood at the edge of a small, quiet town. The family, John, his wife Sarah, and their 10-year-old daughter Emily, had been searching for a peaceful place to settle down away from the hustle and bustle of the city. The house, with its sprawling garden and vintage charm, seemed perfect. The previous owners had left in a hurry, leaving behind old furniture and a sense of mystery. The neighbors whispered about strange occurrences, but the Thompsons dismissed them as mere gossip. They were happy to start anew, and their loyal dog Max, a sturdy German shepherd, seemed to love the new space. But as the days turned into weeks, something peculiar began to happen. It started with a low, guttural growl. Every night, just as the clock struck midnight, Max would sit at the foot of the stairs, his ears perked up, and let out a deep, menacing growl. At first, John and Sarah thought it was just the dog reacting to the unfamiliar surroundings. But as the nights passed, the growling became more intense, more urgent. Emily, who shared a special bond with Max, noticed something strange. "Mom, Dad, Max isn't growling at nothing," she said one morning over breakfast. "He's looking at something we can't see." John chuckled, trying to ease the tension. "Dogs have sharp senses, sweetheart. Maybe he's hearing a raccoon or a stray cat outside." But Sarah wasn't so sure. She had noticed the way Max's fur would stand on end, his eyes fixed on the dark corner of the living room. It was as if he was staring at something, or someone. One night, Sarah decided to stay up and watch Max. She sat on the couch, a cup of tea in hand, as the clock ticked closer to midnight. The house was eerily quiet, save for the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. Then, as if on cue, Max began to growl. Sarah's heart raced as she followed Max's gaze. He was staring at the corner of the room, his teeth bared, his body tense. But there was nothing there, just shadows dancing in the dim light. "Max, what is it?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. The dog let out a sharp bark, his eyes never leaving the corner. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She reached for her phone, turning on the flashlight, and pointed it at the corner. The beam of light revealed nothing but an empty space, but Max continued to growl. His growls growing louder, more desperate. Sarah felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread. She grabbed Max by the collar and hurried upstairs, locking the bedroom door behind her. The next day, Sarah decided to investigate the history of the house. She visited the local library, where she found old newspaper clippings and records. What she discovered sent shivers down her spine. The house had been built in the late 1800s by a wealthy family. But tragedy struck when the youngest daughter, a girl named Eliza, disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The family searched for her for months, but she was never found. The house was eventually sold, and over the years it changed hands multiple times. Each family reported strange occurrences. Footsteps in the night, cold spots, and most chillingly, the sound of a child crying. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the last article. It was dated just a few years ago. The previous owners had left abruptly, claiming that the house was haunted. They had even tried to sell it at a fraction of its value, but no one would buy it. That night, Sarah shared her findings with John. He was skeptical at first, but the look of fear in her eyes convinced him to take it seriously. Together, they decided to confront whatever was in the house. As midnight approached, they sat in the living room, Max by their side. The air was thick with tension. The clock struck 12, and Max began to growl, his eyes fixed on the corner. This time, John and Sarah saw it too. A faint, shadowy figure, barely visible in the dim light. It was the silhouette of a young girl, her face pale, her eyes hollow. She stood there, silently staring at them. Emily, who had been listening from the stairs, let out a scream. The figure turned its head, its gaze locking onto Emily. Max lunged forward, barking furiously, but the figure vanished as quickly as it had appeared. The next morning, the Thompsons knew they had to do something. They contacted a local paranormal investigator who agreed to help them. Using specialized equipment, the investigator conducted a thorough examination of the house. In the basement, they found a hidden room, concealed behind a false wall. Inside, they discovered a small, rusted cage and a diary belonging to Eliza. The entries told a horrifying story. Eliza had been locked in the basement by her own family, who believed she was possessed. She had died there, alone and terrified. The investigator performed a cleansing ritual, hoping to put Eliza's spirit to rest. But as they left the house that night, Max began to growl once more. The figure of Eliza appeared again, this time at the top of the stairs. Her eyes were filled with sorrow, but also anger. Emily, tears streaming down her face, stepped forward. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry for what happened to you." For a moment, the figure seemed to soften. Then, with a final, mournful look, Eliza vanished. The growling stopped after that night. The house felt different, lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. The Thompsons decided to stay, determined to give Eliza the peace she had been denied for so long. Max, too, seemed at ease. He no longer growled at the shadows, and the family felt safe once more. But they never forgot the chilling reason behind Max's growls. The tragic story of a little girl who had been lost to time, and the dog who had tried to protect them from her restless spirit. The days that followed Eliza's final appearance were filled with a strange mix of relief and unease. The Thompsons were grateful that the growling had stopped, but the memory of the little girl's ghost lingered in their minds. They couldn't shake the feeling that Eliza's spirit was still watching over them, even if she no longer appeared in the shadows. Emily, in particular, was deeply affected by the experience. She had always been a sensitive child, and the encounter with Eliza had left her with a profound sense of empathy for the girl who had suffered so much. She often found herself thinking about Eliza, wondering what her life might have been like if she hadn't been locked away in that dark, cold basement. One afternoon, while exploring the attic, Emily stumbled upon an old, dusty box. Inside, she found a collection of Eliza's belongings: a tattered doll, a few faded dresses, and a small, intricately carved wooden box. The box was locked, but Emily was determined to find out what was inside. She took it to her father, who managed to pry it open with a screwdriver. Inside the box, they found a delicate silver locket. When Emily opened it, she saw a tiny photograph of Eliza, her eyes wide and innocent, a faint smile on her lips. The sight of the photograph brought tears to Emily's eyes. She felt a deep connection to the girl, as if they were somehow linked across time. Emily began wearing the locket every day, feeling a sense of comfort whenever she touched it. But as the days passed, she started to notice strange things happening around her. Objects would move on their own, doors would creak open, and she would sometimes hear faint whispers when she was alone. One night, as she lay in bed, Emily felt a cold breeze brush against her cheek. She opened her eyes and saw Eliza standing at the foot of her bed, her translucent form glowing faintly in the moonlight. But this time, Eliza's expression was different. She looked calm, almost peaceful. "Emily," Eliza whispered, her voice soft and melodic. "Thank you for finding my locket. It holds the key to my freedom." Emily sat up, her heart pounding. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. Eliza smiled gently. "The locket is a symbol of my soul's connection to this world. As long as it remains here, I cannot move on. But if you take it to the place where I was laid to rest, I will finally be free." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'll do it, Eliza, I promise." The next morning, Emily told her parents about her encounter with Eliza. John and Sarah were hesitant at first, but they could see how much it meant to their daughter. They agreed to help her fulfill Eliza's request. That afternoon, the Thompsons made their way to the forgotten cemetery on the outskirts of town. The cemetery was overgrown with weeds, the headstones weathered and cracked. It was a lonely, desolate place, but Emily felt a sense of purpose as she walked through the gates. They found Eliza's grave, a small, unmarked stone hidden beneath a tangle of ivy. Emily knelt down and placed the locket on the ground in front of the grave. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, asking for Eliza's soul to find peace. As she stood up, a gentle breeze swept through the cemetery, carrying with it the faint sound of a child. Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest, as if Eliza's spirit was thanking her. From that day on, the house felt different. The air was lighter, the shadows less menacing. The Thompsons no longer felt the presence of Eliza's ghost, and Max no longer growled at unseen figures in the night. Emily continued to visit Eliza's grave, bringing flowers and talking to her as if she were an old friend. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had helped Eliza find the peace she had been denied for so long. As the years passed, the Thompsons' lives returned to normal. They renovated the old house, turning it into a warm and welcoming home. Emily grew up, but she never forgot the little girl who had touched her life in such a profound way. Years later, when Emily was in college, she decided to write a book about her experiences with Eliza. She wanted to share the story of the little girl who had been forgotten by time, to ensure that her memory would live on. The book became a bestseller, and people from all over the world were moved by Eliza's story. The Thompsons' old house became a place of pilgrimage for those who wanted to pay their respects to the girl who had finally found peace. Emily often returned to the house, now a museum dedicated to Eliza's memory. She would stand in the living room, where Max had once growled at the shadows, and feel a sense of pride. She had helped Eliza's spirit find closure, and in doing so, she had found a sense of purpose in her own life. One evening, as Emily stood in the cemetery, she felt a familiar presence beside her. She turned and saw Eliza, her form glowing softly in the twilight. Eliza smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Emily," she whispered. "You have given me the peace I have longed for. It is time for me to move on." Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I'll miss you, Eliza," she said, her voice breaking. Eliza reached out and gently touched Emily's cheek. "I will always be with you, in your heart. Remember me, and I will never truly be gone." With that, Eliza's form began to fade, dissolving into the evening air. Emily watched as the last traces of the little girl's spirit vanished, leaving behind a sense of calm and serenity. Emily went on to become a successful author and advocate for children's rights. She dedicated her life to helping those who, like Eliza, had been forgotten or mistreated. She often spoke about the importance of empathy and compassion, and how one person's actions could make a difference in the lives of others. The Thompsons' old house remained a place of solace and reflection, a reminder of the power of love and forgiveness. And though Eliza's spirit was no longer there, her legacy lived on in the hearts of those who had been touched by her story. As Emily grew older, she often thought about the night she had first seen Eliza's ghost. She remembered the fear, the uncertainty, but also the sense of connection she had felt with the little girl. It was a journey that had changed her life, one that had taught her the importance of courage, compassion, and the enduring power of the human spirit. On her final visit to the cemetery, Emily placed a single rose on Eliza's grave. She knelt down and whispered a final goodbye, her heart filled with gratitude for the little girl who had taught her so much. As she stood up, she felt a gentle breeze brush against her cheek, carrying with it the faint sound of a child's laugh. Emily smiled, knowing that Eliza's spirit was finally at peace. And as she walked away, she felt a sense of closure, knowing that she had fulfilled her promise to the little girl who had once been lost, but was now forever remembered.